The ground shook like thunder under the deep mining colony. Lights flickered and steel beams screamed as they twisted. Then came the sound no miner ever wanted to hear. A long crack, then silence. And suddenly, everything collapsed. Logan's eyes opened slowly, dust covering his visor. Alarms flashed red inside his helmet, warning of system failures. He tried to move, but heavy rocks pinned his legs. His breathing was shallow, and pain shot through his side. The emergency HUD blinked. His exosuit was damaged but alive, just barely. Status check. He muttered, voice shaky. The suit replied, power level, 27%, hydraulic system, 54%, communication, offline. Not good, he thought. Not good at all. He pushed the rocks off with his exoskeleton arms, each movement slow and heavy. After what felt like hours, he managed to sit up. Around him, everything was broken. Tunnels that were once safe now looked like a tomb. He tried the comms again, but there was only static. Then, just as he stood up, he heard something. Oh, voice faint and soft, help, anyone. Logan turned quickly, his flashlight barely working. He followed the sound through the smoke and rubble. After crawling over fallen beams and sharp rocks, he found her. An alien girl. Slim, pale-skinned, her body half crushed under a metal support. Her eyes glowed dimly the way her species' eyes did when they were near death. Please, leave me. Save yourself, she whispered, coughing hard. Logan knelt beside her, checking her vitals. Her leg was badly broken, and the blood loss was dangerous. You're not dying here, he said firmly. Not on my watch. He used a makeshift tool to lift the metal beam, straining every joint in his suit. The gears whined and his arm hydraulics sparked, but he didn't stop. Finally, the beam gave way and he pulled her free. She screamed in pain, but he held her close and whispered, "It's okay, I got you." He opened the medkit on his belt, injecting her with a painkiller. Then he wrapped her leg with a tight bandage and sprayed it with a healing foam. She looked at him with confusion. "Why are you helping me?" "I'm not one of yours." Logan looked back, his voice calm. "Down here, we're all just people trying to live." Carefully, he lifted her into his arms, feeling the extra weight slow him down. He checked his suit. Hydraulics strained, power lower than before. But he had no choice. Leaving her wasn't an option. He began walking, slowly, carefully, every step echoing in the quiet tunnel. He didn't know the full way out yet, but he had studied the layout before. The main exit was too far, but there was an old maintenance shaft north of Section 12. If it wasn't collapsed, maybe, just maybe, they could make it. After 1 hour, the darkness felt heavier. The tunnel had no power, no airflow, only the sound of his breathing and her soft moans. The suit's voice interrupted again. Warning. Oxygen supply. 72 hours remaining. 3 days, he thought. 3 days to get out of this nightmare. Rin, the alien girl, stirred in his arms, her face pale with pain. "You should leave me. I'm slowing you down," she whispered. Logan didn't answer right away, he just kept walking. Then he said softly, "I don't leave people behind, not even strangers." The tunnel narrowed ahead, forcing him to crawl while holding her. It was slow, painful, and dangerous. Loose rocks fell with every movement, and sharp edges tore into the exosuit's legs. But Logan didn't stop, not even when the sweat dripped into his eyes. At one point, a distant rumble made the ground tremble again. Rin gasped, afraid another quake would bury them. Logan rapped, his arms tighter around her, shielding her body with his own. When it passed, she looked at him differently, still weak but with something new in her eyes. "You're risking everything," she said, voice barely audible. He gave a tired smile. "Then let's make it worth it." They stopped only once for rest, hiding under a broken support beam. Logan used his body as a pillow so she could sleep without pain. He looked at the small blue light on his wrist, power dropping fast. But his eyes stayed focused, sharp, unshaken. He knew this was only the beginning. 3 days was a long time underground. But he had made a promise to himself the moment he saw her. She would live no matter the cost, and with that silent vow, he stood up again, adjusted his grip, and carried her deeper into the dark toward the unknown. The tunnel grew narrower, colder, and darker with every step Logan took. The ground was uneven, and the air tasted like metal and dust. His arms were getting tired, but he held Rin tightly in his grip. She was shivering now, not just from pain but from fear. They had moved for hours, maybe more. Time didn't feel real anymore. The exosuit's lights were fading, the backup battery running low. Still, Logan kept going, breathing slow and steady, watching every step. Then suddenly, Rin grabbed his chest plate weakly and whispered, "Stop. Don't go further yet." Logan froze, his boots sinking slightly into the soft earth. He looked around, confused. "What is it?" he asked, his voice low. Her eyes were wide, glowing softly in the dark. "This area, it's their nest." He squinted ahead and saw strange shapes hanging from the tunnel ceiling. Long, spiny shells like broken cocoons, and something worse. Movement, slow and slithering. Tiny eyes reflecting the light blinked back at him. Dozens of glowing insect-like creatures crawled on the walls and ceiling, watching silently. Rin swallowed hard. "They're called fangs. We used to study them before the collapse, but they're not scared of us anymore." Logan slowly knelt and placed her down beside a chunk of rubble. His exosuit let out a soft hiss as he crouched. Beside her, his flashlight dimming again. "If they attack," he started, but she cut him off. "They don't like fast movement or heat. If we stay quiet and cold, they may ignore us." The fangs began to hiss low and soft, their legs tapping against metal pipes. One of them dropped from the ceiling and crawled across the floor, right in front of Logan's boot. He held his breath, praying the suit didn't make a sound. The creature sniffed the air, then moved on, disappearing into a crack in the wall. They waited there, still as statues, for what felt like an eternity. Logan could hear Rin's shallow breaths, the sound of her heart beating too fast. She closed her eyes tightly as another fang crawled close, brushing her foot. Her body trembled, and Logan placed a calm hand on her arm, grounding her. The suit's cooling system was failing. His internal temperature rising, sweat soaked his neck, and the suit's warning flashed. Overheat imminent. He thought fast, remembering a trick used by soldiers during desert missions. He reached into his kit and pulled out a packet of emergency coolant gel. He cracked it open and smeared it across his chest and back, cooling the exosuit's heat signature. The fangs shifted suddenly, reacting to a noise far behind them. Another rumble, another fallen pipe. They hissed, chittered, and some moved toward the sound. Distracted, Logan whispered, "Now's our chance," and gently picked Rin up again. They crept forward, slow and silent, moving like shadows through a world of teeth. But just as they reached the end of the tunnel, Rin gasped. One of the creatures had landed on her shoulder. Logan froze, every muscle in his body tense. The creature's claw tapped against her neck, its mouth opening slightly. Rin's breath hitched and her body began to tremble. "Don't move," Logan whispered. "You're okay. Just breathe." Slowly, carefully, he used the tip of a metal tool to nudge the creature off her shoulder. It hissed but didn't strike. It crawled back into the wall and vanished. Rin let out a long, shaky breath, her eyes filled with tears. "I thought I was dead," she whispered, voice cracking. "You're not," Logan replied, his voice gentle but firm. "Not while I'm here." Finally, they reached a large metal door, half buried under dirt but still intact. It was the exit from the nesting chamber, one step closer to freedom. Logan kicked it, open with his heavy boot, the noise echoing. Behind them, the fangs hissed again, louder this time. "Go, go, go," Logan said, running with all his remaining energy. They dashed into the next tunnel, and the door slammed shut behind them. He dropped to his knees, breathing hard, his muscles screaming in pain. But they were alive, still together, still moving forward. Rin touched his shoulder, her voice soft. "You saved me again. You keep doing that." Logan gave a tired smile. "Well, I'm stubborn, and maybe a little crazy." She looked at him, her eyes more curious now than afraid. "I think "You're something else," she whispered. The exosuit's voice spoke again. Power level, 14%. Not much time left. Not much strength either. But Logan stood up again, adjusted her in his arms, and walked deeper into the dark tunnel where the next challenge waited. The tunnel sloped upward now, but Logan's steps had slowed. The weight of Rin in his arms, the cracking joints of the exosuit, and the warning lights blinking red all told him the same thing. He was running out of time. Still, he didn't stop. He kept moving, one step at a time, his eyes fixed on the faint blue marker glowing in the dust ahead. Rin stirred in his arms, wincing as pain returned through the healing foam. She whispered, "You should have left me. I'm not worth this." Logan didn't reply right away, his breath heavy and shallow. He looked down at her, face covered in dirt but eyes still shining. "You're not dead yet," he said softly. "That means you're worth everything." They turned a corner and entered a large open chamber. Logan stopped, his heart sinking. Ahead of them stretched a wide underground gorge, the roof high above like the inside of a massive cathedral. The only way across was an old transport bridge, once strong, now broken in the center. Half of it still hung in the air, held by rusty cables, the rest dangled over the abyss. Logan walked to the edge and looked down. No bottom, just darkness and falling dust. A single drop would mean instant death. He looked left and right, no other way across. Rin's face twisted in fear as she realized what he was thinking. "No," she said quickly. "You can't carry me over that. It's suicide." Logan sighed, then placed her gently down against the tunnel wall. "I need to check how much weight this bridge can handle," he said. He stepped carefully onto the hanging bridge, the metal creaking under his boot. He tested. The first few planks they held but just barely. His exosuit's weight was too much for this old structure, and carrying Rin would only make it worse. He returned to her side and sat down for a moment. Thinking then, without a word, he began detaching parts of the exosuit, the leg armor, one arm plate, even the side battery pack. All came off piece by piece. "What are you doing?" Rin asked in shock. "Making myself lighter," he answered. "It's the only way." She looked terrified. "No, you'll be too weak without the suit." Logan gave a tired smile. "Then I'll be weak and stubborn." Once he removed everything he could, he picked her up again, feeling the difference immediately. He stepped onto the bridge slowly, each movement careful and balanced. The cables groaned, the platform swayed, and wind howled from the depths below. Step by step, he moved forward, eyes locked on the other side. Halfway across, the platform jolted, and one of the cables snapped with a loud crack. The bridge dropped several inches, and Logan nearly lost his balance. Rin gasped, clinging tightly to him. "Don't look down," he said, voice calm, though sweat covered his face. The last part of the bridge was missing. The final jump was nearly 2 meters. No railing, no safety net, just open air and a desperate hope. Logan adjusted his grip on her, backed up slightly, then ran forward. He jumped, exosuit motors whining at their limit. For one terrifying second they flew through the air. Then his boots slammed into the edge of the far ledge. Too far. He slipped, falling forward, fingers grabbing the edge. One hand held the rock, the other held Rin. The suit screamed warnings, muscles burning. He dangled there, her weight pulling them both down. Rin looked up, eyes full of panic. "Let me go." "You'll fall." Logan gritted his teeth. "I'm not dropping you. Never." With a cry of effort, he slammed his elbow into the stone, locking himself in. Using all his strength, he pulled both of them up, inch by inch. At last, they rolled onto the solid. Ground gasping, shaking, but alive. For a long time, neither spoke. The silence of the tunnel was only broken by Logan's breathing and the soft buzz of a dying exosuit. Then Rin said quietly, "No one's ever done that for me. Not even my own kind." Logan looked at her, his voice low and rough. "Maybe your kind needs better friends." He stood up slowly, legs shaking, and picked her up again. The bridge behind them swayed in the wind, now useless. There was no turning back now, only forward, deeper into the mountain. They entered a narrow tunnel, this one colder than before. Faint sounds echoed through the walls. Metal grinding, wind howling, or maybe something else. Rin leaned her head against his, chest weak but awake. "You're insane," she whispered. "But, thank you," Logan smiled. "You'll owe me a drink when we get out of here." The exosuit buzzed again. Power level, 9%. They were running out of time, but Logan's eyes were still sharp, still burning with that same fire. He had made it across the broken bridge, and he wasn't stopping now. Not until she was safe. Not until they both saw the stars again. The tunnel ahead was tighter and more silent than the others. There was no light, no airflow, just dry dust in the air and the low hum of Logan's exosuit. The only warmth came from the small glow on Rin's wristband, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Logan carried her close, careful not to make noise. Each footstep was soft, controlled, even though his legs ached with every move. They hadn't spoken in a while. Both were tired, both holding on to the last bits of strength and hope. But just as Logan passed under a low-hanging pipe, he froze. A sound, distant, muffled, bounced off the walls of the tunnel. Voices, low, and fast, speaking in a tongue he didn't recognize. At first, Logan thought he was imagining things. He turned his head and listened again. This time, Rin stirred and whispered weakly, "Do you hear that?" He nodded. "Yeah. Sounds like people." She blinked slowly, still dazed. Could be survivors. He felt hope rise in his chest. More survivors meant help, medical kits, maybe even a path to the surface. But before he could take a step forward, Rin's hand grabbed his chest plate firmly. Her eyes, once sleepy, were now wide with warning. "No," she whispered. "That's not our people." "That's pirate slang," Logan froze. "Pirates? Down here?" She nodded, her voice shaking. "Scavengers. They come after disasters. Loot bodies. Strip tech. Kill witnesses." His heart pounded, and he instinctively turned off the small light on his shoulder. Darkness swallowed them. Instantly, the only sound now was the faint echo of boots on metal somewhere ahead. Then a gruff voice echoed through the tunnel in broken galactic common. "Spread out. Find survivors. Clean sweep." Logan pressed himself against the tunnel wall, crouching behind a pile of fallen debris. He placed Rin gently behind a slab of broken metal, covering her with a thermal blanket to hide her heat signature. Then, he powered down the exosuit's outer lights and crouched beside her, listening. The footsteps grew louder. 3, maybe 4 people. One of them laughed. "Bet some idiot's still breathing down here." Logan looked at Rin, who mouthed silently, "Don't move." He nodded and stayed completely still. A flashlight beam swept across the tunnel, landing just inches from Logan's boot. He didn't flinch, didn't breathe, just waited. The light moved on, and the pirate muttered, "Nothing. Maybe rats." But another voice spoke from farther back. "The scanner picked up heat. Someone's close." Logan tensed, knowing they had limited time. If the pirates found them, there'd be no fight. His power was low, and Rin couldn't even stand then. An idea sparked in his mind. He reached into his emergency pouch and pulled out a sound decoy disc. He twisted the dial to max and threw it softly toward a cracked wall to the left. A second later, the device chirped and began to play the sound of breathing and footsteps. The pirates jumped, shouting, "Over there!" 2 of them rushed toward the sound, weapons raised. The other stayed behind. Close. Too close. Logan watched his shadow, waiting for the right moment. Then, as the pirate stepped forward, Logan grabbed a rock and tossed it down a side shaft to the right. Another noise. Another distraction. The pirate cursed and followed the sound, disappearing into the shadows. Logan didn't wait. He grabbed Rin and began crawling backward into a narrow service duct he had spotted earlier. It was barely big, enough for him to fit through with her in his arms. The metal wall scraped against his shoulders, and Rin's blanket snagged. But he pushed on. Behind them, voices shouted, "The decoy! It's fake! Find them!" They disappeared into the duct just in time, and Logan pulled a heavy panel over the entrance, sealing it behind them. Now inside a maintenance shaft, darker and tighter than anything before, he let out a slow breath. The smell of rust and oil filled the air, but at least they were safe for now. Rin coughed weakly. You tricked them. You're crazy. He smiled in the dark. I prefer creative under pressure. She looked up at him, her eyes tired but proud. You saved me again. He looked down at her and whispered, I said I would. Then he checked the suit. Power, level 6%. Time was running out faster than ever. They crawled through the duct in silence. Metal creaked, and tiny bugs scurried past them. Every move was slower, every breath harder. But they were alive, and they were moving. That was enough. After a long while, they reached a hatch that opened into another tunnel. This one looked different. Older, but cleaner. Signs of a transport line long abandoned. Rails still intact on the floor. Logan smiled. This might take us to the waste shaft near the surface. Rin blinked. Then we're close? Closer than before, he said. And that's all we need. With fresh hope, he lifted her once more and stepped into the dark, heading toward whatever came next. Neither of them knew what waited ahead, but they had already survived the fangs, the fall, and the pirates, and they weren't done yet. The tunnel echoed with every step Logan took. His arms ached from carrying Rin for so long. His back felt like it had been cut open by the sharp corners of the tunnel walls. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. Rin had stopped speaking some time ago. Her breathing was slow and shallow. The healing foam was fading and her leg looked worse than before. But she was still alive. That was all Logan needed to keep going. He passed a fallen warning sign with faded letters. The old alien text had rusted away, but one word stood out clearly. Flooded. Logan cursed under his breath. The corridor was sloped downward, water flowing slowly under his feet, a soft current brushing against his boots like cold fingers. After 30 steps, the water reached his knees. He stopped and looked ahead. The tunnel disappeared into darkness, but the sound of water lapping against metal grew louder. He turned his head. Rin, he whispered. We need to go through water now. Her eyes barely opened, but she nodded weakly. I can't swim, she whispered. You'll have to carry me again. Logan smiled gently. Wouldn't dream of doing anything else. He lowered her carefully onto a floating panel ripped from the wall, flat, metal, and strong. He tied her in with belt straps and placed a small broken pipe under it for extra buoyancy. The suit's systems whined again. Power level, 4%. The motors were almost dead, but the strength in his arms was still his own. He grabbed the edge of the floating platform and began wading forward into the black water. It was freezing cold, biting into his legs with every step. He kept his eyes ahead, but his mind ran wild. Anything could be in the water. Old machines, broken wires, predators, traps. As the water reached his waist, something brushed past his leg. He flinched but didn't scream. Rin looked up in fear, her fingers clutching the platform. Logan whispered, Just a pipe, maybe. The tunnel widened suddenly, opening into a large chamber. He stopped at the edge, eyes squinting in the dim light. The ceiling had collapsed halfway through, and the chamber was filled with water. No floor, no rails, only floating debris and silence. There was no way around. Only across. Logan took a deep breath and began pulling the platform into deeper water. Soon his feet could no longer touch the ground. He began to swim, dragging Rin behind him slowly, painfully. The exosuit was heavy, even with most parts removed. But he used slow, strong strokes, his breath steady. Halfway across the chamber, the light above flickered. Then came a deep, low growl, metal shifting, something large stirring underwater. Rin's eyes flew open. Logan, she whispered in fear. He stopped and listened, the water around them suddenly calm. Too calm. Then a loud splash echoed from behind, followed by a rush of bubbles. Something was moving under them. Something big. Logan clenched his teeth, pulling, faster. His muscles screaming. Rin shut her eyes tightly, whispering, Don't stop, don't stop. A shadow passed beneath them, long and wide like a machine beast or something worse. Logan didn't look down. He didn't slow. He just kept pulling her through the cold water toward the edge of the chamber. Suddenly, the floating platform jolted. Something had bumped it from underneath. Rin let out a short cry, but Logan grabbed the platform tightly. "I got you," he said, voice hard. "You're not going anywhere." A loud screech echoed through the chamber as something scraped against metal beneath them. Then, as quickly as it came, it vanished. The water settled again, but Logan didn't wait. He reached the far edge, grabbed the broken railings, and pulled the platform out with all his strength. He collapsed beside Rin, coughing, soaked and shaking. They lay there in silence for a while. The chamber behind them still echoed with strange noises. Rin turned her head slowly. "You're insane," she whispered, smiling through her exhaustion. "You've said that before." Logan replied with a grin, his voice shaking with cold. She blinked slowly. "And I'll keep saying it if you keep surviving things like that." He pulled a thermal cloth from his bag and wrapped it around her shoulders. Then he sat beside her, letting the freezing air bite into his soaked clothes. The exosuit flickered, showing one last warning. Power level. 2%. After that, there would be no more suit strength, no emergency lighting, no automatic support. "I can't believe we made it," Rin whispered, her voice barely there. Logan looked out at the water behind them, then at the long tunnel ahead. "We're not done," he said, "but we're one chamber closer to the surface." He stood up, shaking the water from his arms, and reached for her. She took his hand, her grip weak but trusting. He lifted her once again into his arms, even as his knees buckled slightly. The pain in his legs didn't matter. The cold didn't matter. Only her life, and the promise he had made to himself the moment he found her under the rubble. No matter what, she would live. And if he had to carry her through fire, water, or death itself, so be it. With the flooded chamber behind them, Logan stepped into the next dark tunnel and continued walking toward the light he still believed was waiting above. The tunnel ahead was tighter, rougher, and filled with thick dust. Every breath Logan took felt like inhaling dry sand. Each step sent a pulse of pain through his legs, his shoulders, his spine. He had been carrying Rin for more than 2 days now, and the weight, both of her and of the promise he made, was starting to crush him. Rin lay limp in his arms, her breathing shallow. Her skin had grown colder and the painkillers were wearing off. She hadn't spoken in hours, only stirred once when Logan nearly dropped her trying to climb over fallen debris. She whispered something then. He thought it was his name, but he couldn't be sure. The exosuit hummed weakly, then beeped. A soft, calm voice spoke from the system. "Warning. Final power cell active. 1% remaining." Logan stopped walking, his body frozen by those words. He looked at the small screen near his wrist, hoping it was a glitch. It wasn't. The last power cell, the final heartbeat of the suit that had kept him moving, was nearly gone. Without it, there'd be no strength boost, no stability, no oxygen management. He would be nothing but a tired, broken man carrying a dying girl through collapsing tunnels. He sat down against a cracked support beam and laid Rin gently on his lap. His head leaned back, staring at the rusted ceiling. A tear slipped from his eye. Not because of fear, but because he didn't know what else to give. Rin stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open. "Why, did you stop?" she whispered, her voice like paper tearing in the wind. Logan smiled sadly, brushing dust from her cheek. "Need a minute." "Suit's dying." She looked down at his wrist display, and her lip trembled. "You can't carry me without it." He shook his head. "Not for long, but I'll try anyway." She slowly reached into the inner pocket of her torn jacket and pulled out something small, a green capsule, glowing softly, an alien medical energy pod. She pressed it against his. "Handed, this has power. Use it." He stared at it, then at her. "If I use this on myself, you might not wake up again," he said, voice hard. She gave a tiny smile. "If you don't use it, we both die." Logan hesitated, staring at the capsule in his hand. He had no time to argue, no time to cry. He clicked it into the emergency port on the suit's back, and the screen blinked. "Energy boost detected. 12%. The suit hissed softly, warming up. Repairing itself just enough for one last effort, Rin closed her eyes again. Unconscious now, her strength given to him. He lifted her once more, and with fresh energy, began to walk again. His legs moved faster, now, but the time felt heavier. The final steps of their journey were near, and he knew the hardest part was still ahead. The tunnel twisted and led into a room filled with glowing crystals, radiation crystals that disrupted signals. They hummed softly, their light beautiful but dangerous. Logan's visor flickered, sensors blinking with errors. He was completely blind to navigation, but he remembered this section from old maps. The exit shaft was nearby, hidden behind one of the crystal walls. He stepped slowly, careful not to bump into the sharp crystal tips. Their energy could fry the suit or worse, kill Rin instantly. He moved like a shadow, turning his body to protect her, arms wrapped tight as he squeezed through the narrow paths. Then he found it, a vent, partly hidden, covered in dust and broken mesh. The escape shaft, just like he had hoped, but it went straight up. No ladder, no handles, just smooth rock and metal. The only way up was to climb. Logan looked at Rin, unconscious, in his arms, and whispered, "We're almost there. Just a little more." He tied her carefully to his chest, using his belt and wires from the suit, securing her completely. Then he took one deep breath and began to climb. The shaft was narrow, his boots slipping on the smooth wall. The suit helped, barely, arms shaking, feet scrambling, fingers bleeding under the gloves. He climbed 1 meter, then another, then slipped down 1/2 meter. But he didn't stop. Every time he almost fell, he thought of Rin's voice. Every time his arms burned, he remembered her saying, "You saved me." And every time his vision blurred, he pushed harder. Finally, he reached the top, a narrow hatch sealed with a rusted lock. He punched it with the last power surge from the suit, and the metal gave way. The hatch flew open, and sunlight poured. Into the tunnel for the first time in days, Logan pulled himself and Rin into the light, collapsing onto warm stone. Above them, the sky was pale blue, and rescue drones hovered in the distance, scanning for life signs. His vision faded. His body gave out. But the last thing he heard was the drone's voice. 2 life forms detected, initiating medical recovery. Sunlight touched his skin like a dream. It was warm, gentle, and blinding after so many days in darkness. Logan didn't move, not at first. His body lay flat on the stone ledge above the shaft, arms limp, legs twitching from exhaustion. The exosuit had powered down completely, its last alert already long gone. He couldn't hear much anymore, only soft beeping sounds, and the buzz of air currents. Somewhere close, something moved. Metal legs touching stone, scanning, watching. A drone hovered beside him, shining a red light over his chest. Then it spoke in a calm voice. "Vital signs detected. Critical condition. Summoning medical unit." Another voice followed, more distant. "We found them. Patch me through to command. They're alive." Logan's mind floated between sleep and pain. He wanted to move, to speak, to tell them about Rin. But all he could do was blink. Just once he was losing the fight, but he knew he had already won the war inside the tunnel. Minutes passed, maybe more, until strong arms lifted him onto a stretcher. A soft hiss followed. Meds injected into his veins, cooling the fire in his chest. Before he fully blacked out, he whispered 2 words, barely louder than a breath. "Save her." When Logan opened his eyes again, everything felt strange. He lay in a clean white bed, soft sheets under his back, medical screens blinking quietly. Beside him, his arm was bandaged, his ribs wrapped, and the pain in his legs had dulled to a distant throb. He tried to sit up, but a voice stopped him gently. "Take it easy. You've been out for 2 days." Logan turned his head and saw a nurse, human, smiling kindly. "You were lucky," she said, checking his IV drip. "Rescue drones picked you up just in time. Another hour, and it might have been too late." His voice cracked. "The girl, alien girl, where is she?" The nurse smiled softly. She's alive, resting in the room next door. The medics say you saved her life. Relief hit him like a wave. He let out a shaky breath and closed his eyes, a tear sliding down his cheek. She was alive. That's all that mattered. Later that evening, the door opened with a soft whoosh. Logan turned his head slowly, expecting another medic. But it was her. Rin stood in the doorway, wrapped in a medical robe, her leg in a soft brace. Her skin was pale, but her eyes were glowing again, stronger than before. She walked with slow steps, leaning on a cane, but she was walking. When their eyes met, she froze for a moment, then she smiled, a real one this time. "Still breathing, huh?" she said softly, voice shaking just a little. Logan grinned. "Barely." She sat beside his bed, eyes scanning the machines and bandages. "You're hurt," she whispered. "So are you," he replied. They sat in silence for a while. The room was quiet, just the hum of the machines and the distant wind outside the windows. Finally, Rin looked at him with something deeper in her eyes, something unspoken. "You carried me for 3 days," she said. "You gave me everything. Even when I begged you to stop," he nodded. "I remember." "Why?" she asked, voice almost too soft to hear. "You didn't even know me." Logan looked at her, tired but steady. "Because someone had to. Because no one else did. Because I couldn't walk away." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she wiped them quickly. "My people don't do that. We leave the weak behind." "Well," he said, "that's not how humans work." She took his hand in hers, small, trembling fingers holding his rough palm. "Then I'm glad it was a human who found me," she whispered. Logan smiled again, this time with warmth that filled the whole room. "Me too." The next day, the rescue team brought them out to the surface camp. They stood side by side as the sun rose over the mountains, golden light bathing the land. Engineers cleaned the broken exosuit, laying it down gently like a fallen warrior. Commanders came, asking questions, taking reports, but Logan didn't care about the medals or records. He looked at Rin, who now stood taller, stronger, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "What now?" she asked him, curious but uncertain. He shrugged. "We heal. Then maybe we walk again." She laughed softly. "Without tunnels this time." Logan nodded. "Yeah, maybe somewhere with real sunlight and no monsters." She turned to him, placing a hand on his arm. "You saved my life," she said. "I owe you everything." He shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. Just promise me one thing." "What?" she asked. "Next time," he said with a grin, "you carry me." Rin laughed, louder this time, a sound filled with life. And as they stood together under the rising sun, neither broken nor alone, the story of the man who carried an alien girl through 3 days of darkness came to an end. But their journey, the one under the open sky, had only just begun.